everyone, welcome back to Alice and the Giant Bookshelf. Today I'm going to be answering all of your questions in my 1000 subscriber Q&A. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. My name's Alice and I have way too many books. And today's video has been a long time in the making and the planning. It is a celebration of me reaching the milestone of 1000 subscribers, which I'm very, very grateful for, and I can't say I ever thought would happen. But yeah, thank you to everybody who has watched any of my videos, commented, subscribed, all of those lovely things. It's been an absolutely brilliant year and a bit. So today I thought we would celebrate in the traditional booktube way, which is to do a Q&A. And I asked you for your questions here on the community tab and over on Instagram, and I do have quite a few questions to get through. So without any further ado, let's get on with the questions. Thanks to everyone who sent me in a question, and if you do have a channel and you sent me a question, I will link your channel in the description box down below. So I definitely urge you to go and check out all these lovely booktubers as well. So the first question today, I had 3 questions from Bookworm Adventure Girl, from Jolene. And Jolene has asked, firstly of all, my favourite book in the Jack Reacher series so far. And that was an easy one. My favourite is 61 Hours. And this has been my favourite for a while. I have a real soft spot for this. Jack Reacher is caught in a sort of snowstorm, snowdrift type scenario. Yeah, things develop from there. This counts down a time period of 61 hours and it's a very, very thrilling ride. So it's my favourite so far. Secondly, Jolene asked me, what have been your top 2 to 3 books so far this year? Now, I have done my top 10 so far this year, but there is a new one to add. One of my favourite books this year, without question, has been Hamnet, which I've just recently read. Such a good book by Maggie O'Farrell. It will definitely feature, I would have thought, in the top 10 of this year, along with, of course, Cloud Cuckoo Land, and my other favourite of this year, Fight Night by Miriam Taves. Those are 3 books I've really, really loved this year. Harry, you gonna come up here? Can you go up? Yeah, go on there. That's it. Let's see you. Is that good? So this is Harry, my cat. I've had to bribe him in here with the roller, which he loves being rollered with. I've bribed him in here today because I've had quite a few subscribers who I don't think will have met Harry yet, and he used to be quite a mainstay on the channel, and when I moved into this book room upstairs, he stopped featuring quite so much. We did have a few videos where he tried to climb on the shelves, but that hasn't happened in absolutely ages. So yeah, I wanted Harry to come in today because I did have a question asked to me about Harry, and as he hasn't appeared in a while, I thought it would be good if we got him on the channel. So now that he's with us and distracted by the roller, let me see if I can find the question about Harry. Oops. Harry, there was a question about you and we need to answer it. So the question about Harry was from Kristin over at Enter the Book. She said, I wanted to make sure someone had asked about Harry and how old he is and his adoption story. So I thought Harry could come on the channel to tell us about this. Aren't you, Has? Good boy. You're a very good boy, aren't you? Harry is now 6 years old. He turned 6 in May, and this month, September, is 5 years since we adopted him. So yeah, Harry's story is a bit of a long one, but basically we met Harry at our friend's house. Our friend used to be a veterinary nurse and she was looking after Harry and we first met him as a 3-month-old kitten. He was very, very cute, weren't you, Harry? You cute? He was very, very cute and we were very, very taken in by him, but he has a bit of a sad story. His mother had been in a road traffic accident and was brought into the vets where my friend worked, and they discovered that she had got kittens inside her. So the kittens were rescued. Sadly, Harry's mother was not able to be rescued. Yeah, Harry was the only kitten from the litter who actually survived. It was also found out later on, after the other kittens had not made it, that Harry actually has a cleft palate in his mouth. So his palate at the top of his mouth has a big hole in it, which means he's not really able to eat solid foods, and he has to be an indoor cat so that he doesn't go and eat things that could get stuck in the roof of his mouth. We had him first come to live with us when he was about 4 or 5 months old, and he went for 2 subsequent operations to try and repair this cleft, and it has never been fully repaired, but he lives a very active and full life in spite of that. He just has to eat like pate food rather than hard food, so he can't really have treats, but he does enjoy himself, don't you? So we're very lucky and happy to have Harry in our lives, and very honoured to have him in our video today. Should we get the roller back? Do you want some more roller? Yeah, you're a good boy, aren't you? You're looking very handsome for everybody. Good boy. Such a good boy, aren't you? Such a good boy. So I thought we'd better ask that question before Harry decides to leave us again, which he undoubtedly will any minute. But thank you for appearing, Harry. People haven't seen you for a long time. So that's Harry, and that's his origin story. That's all about you, isn't it? All about you. Yeah, everything's all about you. Going back to Jolene's questions, Jolene also asked me, what have you loved most and what has surprised you most about your channel? And I think these would be the same thing. What I've loved most is the interaction between myself, fellow booktubers and watchers of booktube. I didn't anticipate how much fun it would be to talk to everybody about books in the comments, and then in the wider world of like book loving through Instagram, through Voxer, and just making these bookish connections and having these bookish conversations. I've absolutely loved it. It's been so great. The same answer really to what surprised me the most. I was not expecting from booktube to make actual real life friends, and there are a few select people who I've now met from booktube, and that's just been a brilliant experience. And my next question is from My Cozy Chronicles, and Elli has asked me, firstly, which book has influenced your life the most? This question is so hard. I don't know if there's been like a really impactful book that has done that for me. I think that I'm going to have to go with Ian Rankin and the book Noughts and Crosses, because this was the first book I read that introduced me to crime fiction, and before that I was reading sort of contemporary books, and I enjoyed them, but they didn't give me a lot to like get to grips with. And when I found crime fiction, I just have loved it ever since and never looked back. So I'm going to say Noughts and Crosses by Ian Rankin, because it completely changed my reading tastes. The next question, also from Elli, was which is your cozy routine, your favourite bookish and non-bookish activities? When it's autumn time, and we're going into autumn time now, I do love a good cozy routine. I like to get a cup of tea. When I'm having hot drinks, it's usually a cup of tea, sometimes decaf coffee. In the autumn time and the winter, definitely curling up under a blanket. Harry will sometimes come under the blanket because he does really have a fondness for blankets. Yeah, just sitting down with a good book, really. Another cozy routine that I am really enjoying lately is sort of waking up and having a cup of tea in bed and reading a bit in the morning. I've been really enjoying that routine lately. And yeah, I would say that those are my favourite two sort of cozy routines for autumn and winter. The lovely Marilyn Maya Mendoza asked me a couple of questions. Her question was, what is my favourite mystery? And I'm going to have to go with Five Little Pigs by Agatha Christie. It's my top favourite Poirot, it's my top favourite Agatha Christie. Therefore, it is undoubtedly my favourite mystery. Next up, one of my subscribers, Nadeem Khan, asked me a couple of questions. The first one is, how do you feel about reading translated literature? Do you think that while reading translated literature, we lose the literary flavour of the book in its original language? To the first part, I do enjoy reading translated fiction, but it isn't something that I've always enjoyed. So I'd say prior to my time on BookTube, the translated books that I had picked up were largely probably crime books, and sometimes when reading them I just felt like the translation was getting in the way for me. I do feel like I maybe felt that I was losing the flavour of the original, because I found that some translations come across quite stilted, and this year, to be honest, I've read very little translated fiction, but I've sort of become more open to it. I've really enjoyed reading sort of translations of older works, and such as Don Quixote. In Don Quixote, I don't feel that the translation was getting in the way of the reading, and the same with Count of Monte Cristo, which I'm reading at the moment. Translation reads really well for me. I don't feel like I'm losing out too much. I really enjoyed the translations I read of the Iliad and the Odyssey late last year and early this year. So I think I am getting more into translated fiction, and I'd like to continue to read some more. Nadeem also asks, which is your favourite translated book? I'm going to show you my favourite from this year. So as a contemporary translated book, this is the translated book I've enjoyed most this year. It might actually be the only contemporary translated book that I've read, but it's called How to Order the Universe by Maria Jose Ferrada, and I was kindly sent this by Gemma from Gemma Books when she had read it. And this is just a really lovely short book, kind of a series of vignettes. I really enjoyed reading this, and I thought the translation was very good. And finally, Nadeem also asks, have you read any Bengali books translated into English? I have not, and I would really love any recommendations you might have, Nadeem, or anybody else, for translated books in general, but definitely translated books from Bengali, because it's obviously time that I addressed not having read one. Okay, Emily from Novell Novels has asked me a few questions. What book would you literally throw in a bin or on a fire? Now, Emily knows that I am against throwing books in the bin or on the fire. I believe that every single book that there is has its reader somewhere. It might not be me, but somebody will like every book, and I think there's a book for every person as well. When I've finished with a book and I haven't particularly enjoyed it, I will often think, who would like this book? And if I can't think of somebody that I actually know, generally donate the book and pass it on via little free libraries or charity shops. I'm not one for throwing books in the bin, but we have recently had Garb August, and probably the most tempted I got to throwing something in the bin, and maybe if it had been my own book I would have done, was Flowers in the Attic. Because it was so frustrating. Flowers in the Attic by Virginia Andrews. Such a frustratingly boring book, and I actually had this out from the library, so luckily it has now been returned to the library and has not had to be put into a bin. Emily also asks, what book would you shout out to thriller newbies? Well, definitely the Jack Reacher series, if you like sort of fast-paced thrillers that are sort of action-based, definitely that series. And if you want a police procedural type of book that is really well written, I would recommend Ian Rankin, his Rebus series. Start at the beginning with Noughts and Crosses. And if you would like something a bit lighter, but still kind of with an element of police procedural, but also with a lot of human element and a lot of soap opera, I would highly recommend the Ruth Galloway series by Elli Griffiths. Emily, I think that you would actually like The Crossing Places by Elli Griffiths, which is the first book in this series, because these are great sort of crimey books without sort of forcing the crime into your face, and they have really good characters. And my final question from Emily is, what's your favourite sweet treat? I love chocolate, but I'm not supposed to have very much chocolate because I'm on a low potassium diet for my kidneys. Yeah, so I'm not allowed much chocolate, but if I was to pick a type of chocolate, probably a Whisper. It depends on my mood though. If I'm not picking chocolate, it would definitely be Haribo Tang Fastics at the moment. Absolutely love sour sweets like that. So my next question is from a subscriber, Stephanie Cubitt, and Stephanie asks, is there a film that you have watched and considered better than the book on which it is based? I've spoken about this one before, but definitely the latest adaptation of Little Women. This is the Greta Gerwig directed version. I think it was released in 2019, and I absolutely love this adaptation. I think it takes everything that is the essence of Little Women, changes it, but in a good way, like sticks with the essence of the book, but I think even improves upon the book. So highly, highly recommend the 2019 adaptation of Little Women. And I'm not often a fan of adaptations, I must say. Glenda W says, "Hi Alice, I'd like to know how specifically you keep track of the books you've read and your TBR." So before starting BookTube, I very much still was keeping a book of books, I called it. It was just a book journal. It was just a notebook actually. And in it I had a list of all my unread books on paper and ticked them off when I had read them. And I also had like a page or half a page on which I wrote each book I read and a little bit about it. I haven't really kept that up very well this year, but I have also been using Goodreads and Storygraph. I use both. I update this. When I get a book, I update it and put it on my giant TBR shelf that I've got on Goodreads. And I think I've done the same on Storygraph, but I'm not 100% sure. And every time I start reading a book, I will mark it as currently reading. And then sometimes I update it on the way along, not always. And then I usually mark it as completed on the day that I complete it. I haven't really been very good at writing actual reviews, so it's usually just a star rating. When I've been DNFing books recently, I've made a DNF shelf to move things to, and I try to write a little review of where I got up to and why I stopped in case I was to pick up that book again. And I usually try and tick the little review boxes on Storygraph. Both of these are apps that I use. Since starting on BookTube, I have also relied a little bit on my videos about my giant TBR to keep track of the numbers, but I do also have an Excel spreadsheet which lists all of the books that I've got. It lists roughly when I got them, if I know. Yes, I have quite a few ways of keeping track of my books. Gloria Z. Thompson has asked me, if you could read one book again for the very first time, what would it be? I think I would have to pick an Agatha Christie book, because the beauty of Agatha Christie really is in reading it for the first time. And I think I would like to read The Murder of Roger Ackroyd again for the first time, because it's one where I unfortunately know what the solution is. I wrote in my book journal that I was very annoyed with it, but I would really like to read it again because I don't remember this annoyance at all. And I thought it was a really good book. So it would definitely be an Agatha Christie, maybe that one, or it would be Susan Cooper's Dark is Rising sequence, which I absolutely love and have read several times. I would love to read that for the first time again. Jack over at Spread Book Joy has asked me a couple of questions. The first one is, if Jack Reacher and Poirot had a battle of wits, who would win? And more importantly, who would you want to win? So, for a battle of wits, I definitely think it would be Poirot. Poirot has his little grey cells. He's a very, very clever man. And I don't think that many story characters could outwit the wit of Hercule Poirot. So I'll go for Hercule Poirot. But if it was a battle of wits that involved in any way the physical, it would obviously be Jack Reacher. I don't think Hercule Poirot would be up for fighting the way that Jack Reacher does. And who would I want to win? Well, he's very pompous and conceited, but probably Poirot. I do have a very, very soft spot for him. I just think Jack Reacher is not all about the wits. Like, he is very, very clever in his own way, and I really, really like him. I think he's a really charismatic character despite some of the physical violence that goes on in the books. I think he has a very strong moral compass, but I'm going to go with Poirot. My heart says Poirot. And Jack's second question is, who is your favourite literary cat? And I don't actually know the answer to this question because I don't think I've read that very many books with great fictional cats. I would probably have to say the Cheshire Cat from Alice in Wonderland. He's always pretty cool. Bit of a scary grin. Or I would maybe say Tom Kitten from The Tale of Tom Kitten by Beatrix Potter. I really, really loved those books as a child. The pictures of Tom Kitten really, really remind me of Harry as well. There are lots of great cats in children's books. My favourite cats that I've read about that are not fictional would probably be Bob, who's in the series A Street Cat Named Bob, and also Tom Cox's cats, because they were just wonderful and I've loved every book about them. They are real cats, not just literary creations. Let's move on. Gunpowder Fiction and Plot says, I think these are questions from Scott. If you could pick any 2 dream authors, living or dead, to write a new book, one author plans everything, one author writes everything, who do you pick? Living and dead authors. I would be really tempted to pick 2 of my favourite authors, one who is living and one who is dead, and the dead one would obviously have to be Agatha Christie. I've already answered her for several questions. I would pick Agatha Christie to do the plotting, I think, because I think her writing style is brilliant, but I think that her plotting and the actual mysteries is very, very detailed and intricate, and I would love to have her input into a book written by a modern author. So I was going to say I'll pick Lee Child, but I don't think Lee Child would do the best job of writing Agatha Christie's mystery plot. So I would probably pick Ian Rankin, because I think that his writing style for me is very literary among crime writers. I think there's a lot of brilliant detail about Edinburgh and the surrounding area. I've really always enjoyed his writing style. So I'm going to pick Agatha Christie and Ian Rankin, with Agatha Christie coming up with the plot and Ian Rankin doing the writing. I would love to see what a book that would produce. And Scott also asks, is there an author whose work is so terrible you'd like to see them placed in gallows and throw food at them? Who is it? And what sort of food would you throw? I really haven't hated any author this much, I don't think. Maybe Kathy Reichs, because I just find her main character, Temperance Brennan, so annoying. And if I could put Temperance Brennan in the stocks and throw things at her, I would definitely do that. So I would possibly put Kathy Reichs. What would I throw at her? Probably, I don't really want to throw tomatoes at people because I find tomatoes a bit disgusting anyway, but yeah, I'll throw tomatoes at her anyway because I really don't like Temperance Brennan, and I would take it out on her author. Another subscriber, or Elsa, asks, what are your favourite reading snacks and drinks? I drink quite a lot of water. I also really enjoy Diet Coke, Coke Zero as cold drinks, or the occasional iced tea in the summer. In the winter, definitely a cup of tea. And favourite snacks, still Haribo Tang Fastics. I love crisps, I really, really love crisps, so maybe a lovely packet of crisps while reading would be good. Ursula's Odds and Sods asks, do you have any special book related accessories like bookmarks, bookends, or a lap desk? I have got lots of bookmarks, many, many bookmarks. I tend to pick them up when I go to places and buy them as well. And I've just collected up quite a lot of bookmarks through the years, so I definitely have a lot of those. I recently bought a little reading light that you can attach to your book at night time so that I could read in bed. Actually, the light is very, very bright, so yeah, I'm not sure that's actually helping the problem. Bookends, I haven't got any of. My shelves are packed pretty tightly as it is, so I don't have any bookends, and I don't have a lap desk. Ursula also asks, favourite libraries and bookstores you've ever been to? So I recently went to London and went in Daunt Books. I think that's an amazing bookshop. Absolutely loved it in Hatchard's in London as well. And I recently did a video in Rochester where I went in England's largest second-hand bookshop, Baggins Bookshop. I think that's a great bookshop. I used to really, really love a second-hand bookshop in Whitstable in the UK, but sadly that has closed. But that used to be brilliant, and I got quite a lot of my second-hand Agatha Christie's from there. I love libraries, and I really love visiting different libraries around the county when I'm in different places. So yeah, lots of favourites. Ursula also asks, do you like tiny libraries like bookmobiles and libraries in subway stations? I love little tiny free libraries. There's one in the nearby village to where we live, and I've been to a brilliant one in another nearby village that's in a old red phone box. And I used to love love, love, love when I was a child. The library van used to come to our school and we used to get to go on it and choose books. And I don't get to go on that anymore because I don't think it comes out to anywhere near me, but the library van is very, very cool. If I was asked what is my dream job, I would say driving the library van or some sort of bookshop on wheels. That would be awesome. Ursula's final question is your dream book to own, like a rare out of print first edition or an antiquarian book signed by the author. So as far as books are concerned that are proving difficult for me to get, I would probably want to own the second half of Buffy the Vampire Slayer season 8 because I have half the graphic novel and not the other half. These Agatha Christie graphic novels that I own, there's only one left that I don't own, which is Peril at End House. They can be very, very expensive, so I'm waiting for this to come up at a sensible price, and that is probably my most wanted at the moment. But if I was ever to find a book signed by Agatha Christie, that would be an absolute dream. The next questions are from the lovely Gemma from Gemma Books, and I think Gemma likes to ask very difficult questions. So she asks, number 1, if you could pick one book from Garb August for Harry to violently attack, what would it be? This is definitely between Flowers in the Attic, which Gemma did try to read with me but gave up, and I don't blame her, it was boring. But to be honest, most of my Garb August books could do with being violently attacked by Harry. I would probably say the Jilly Cooper book because it was definitely my least favourite. It was huge, so there would be a lot for Harry to attack. So I'm going to pick that one. Score by Jilly Cooper, that's what I'm going to let Harry violently attack. If Harry had his own channel, what would he call it? Is Gem's second question. So in the early days of the channel, when I had a dining table next to me all the time, Harry would make many appearances in videos, so much so that I actually began to suspect that it was his channel and not mine, because he does like to heavily supervise everything that goes on in this house. I'd like to think it would be something like Harry and the Something, like Harry and the Giant Bookshelf, but the reality is that Harry is very self-centered, so it would probably just be called Harry, or Harry's World, like Harry Planet or Cat Planet. It would definitely be Harry-centric. Gem's final question is as follows. You are stranded on a desert island with 4 booktubers. Ange from Ange's Book Chatter, Emily from Novelle Novels, Jack from Spread Book Joy, and Danny from Danny's Book World. Who do you send for help? Who do you nominate to cook? Who guards the camp, and who do you throw in front of the hungry tiger? So I've got no idea why we're stranded on a desert island that contains hungry tigers, Gemma. I noticed that you are not stranded on this island at all with us. I don't know the answer to this question, but I am an extremely indecisive person, so I don't think I would be best qualified to make this decision. And I think we are a very strong group of strong women booktubers, and I think that we would work best as a democracy, and I think this point would be under discussion. I think we would be able to get our heads together and decide between us who would do each of these things. Go for help, cook, guard the camp, and be thrown to the hungry tiger. I don't think that we would end up throwing each other to the hungry tiger. I could be wrong. I think we would find some way to repel this hungry tiger. Me, Jack and Emily all have experience of dealing with cats. My cat is particularly violent, so I think we would find some other way. That's what I'd like to think anyway. Moving on to some less fantastical questions. Anna McCrory has asked me, do you prefer to read hardback or paperback books? I don't really mind, but hardback books tend to take up more room, but also they look very pretty. But they are, for me, generally more difficult and heavier to hold. So for reading purposes only, I would pick paperbacks because I just find them easier to read in bed, easier to read on the sofa. I'll go with paperbacks. Hope Springs asks, is there a book that you have loved that everyone else hated, and a book you hated which everyone seemed to love? So a book I hated which everyone seemed to love is The Island of Missing Trees by Elif Shafak. Just didn't get the hype around that book at all, and I couldn't get through it. I DNF'd it. And the other one that is very similar to that, but many years ago, not in my time on BookTube, would be Life of Pi by Jan Martel. At the time I read it, everyone was reading it, everyone was raving about it. and I just didn't enjoy it or get into it at all, so I DNF'd that one as well. That part of the question is easier. A book I loved that everyone else hated, I'm not really sure. There's not been any book I've read on BookTube that I've said I've loved and everybody's gone, oh no, I absolutely hate that book. So I can't really think of one. But I think some of my books are definitely either an acquired taste or not everyone's cup of tea. I know that I do read quite a lot of crime books that are quite hard-hitting and quite gory, and I know not everybody likes or is able to read that sort of thing. Maybe an author that I really love, who I think is quite divisive in that other people don't like her because of the gore and the violence, would be Karen Slaughter. Really enjoy her books. Right, V at the Sassy Library Fox asks, if you could have any superpower, which one would it be and why? I would like a superpower that enables me to clean my house without making virtually any effort. So any superpower that would do that would be great. Maybe it could be the power of like being incredibly fast, or maybe just the power to make things do things by themselves, some sort of telekinesis for cleaning. That would be fantastic. The next question is from Bettina Cecilia Feld, and she says, my question is, how many books do you actually own? This was so difficult to answer, so I finally went to my shelves and counted, but I do have a couple of caveats for the answer to this question. The first caveat is that there are some books of mine that are in storage boxes in our garage. I think there even might be a couple of book boxes still in my mum's garage, and there are also definitely some books in our loft. So I wasn't able to get to and count those. Also in my garage are a lot of children's books that I had for when I was teaching and that I've had since childhood, some of them. There are a lot of those and I've never ever counted those, and they were not easy to get to count either. So what I have counted is the rest of the books in my house. I have a bookshelf downstairs which I used to film by. I have a bookshelf behind the camera that's quite a low bookshelf, and I have behind me this big bookshelf that is the whole wall. So I counted those 3 bookshelves. I counted all of the books that I've got lying around the house in piles or that I'm in the process of reading. So I hope that I've counted everything that isn't in a box in my house, including some of my husband's books, but not necessarily all of them, because some of them I will never ever read, and including a few books that I borrowed from my mum that are on my shelves. I have definitely got near to 900. I think it came out about 880, or it might have been 890. So roughly about 900 books. I definitely think that including the ones that are in various storage spaces that I can't get to, there would be at least 1,000. So yeah, it's definitely a giant bookshelf. MJ at Reading This Life has asked me, it may not apply, but I'll ask anyway, what is one book you recommended that you later regretted recommending? So I don't think I've ever had a book where I really regretted recommending it, because I just love recommending books. One book that I really love is The End of the World Running Club by Adrian J. Walker. So my story about this and recommending this is I had recommended it to several friends who had told me they enjoyed it afterwards. And on that basis, my mum and I went to a small book club that was being started up locally, and we were asked what books did we think we should read, and I suggested The End of the World Running Club. It was agreed we would read that first for some reason, and then when I was rereading it for this book club, and it had only been a year or so since I'd read it the first time, but I was really enjoying it the second time. But as I read it, I was thinking, this is really brutal. And I could remember that one of the other people in the book club had said she didn't really read books that had these brutal things in, that had violence in, that had disasters in. And as I was reading, I was thinking, oh no, what have I done? I should not have recommended this book to this book group. But thankfully, when we got together to discuss it, it was all okay, and she had enjoyed the book, although she did find some of the darker moments very dark. So yeah, I'm still not sure whether recommending that to that book group was a great idea or not. but I enjoyed reading it for a second time anyway, and I would still recommend it to people. Definitely a very good book if you like post-apocalyptic fiction. So I have also got another question from Marilyn Meyer Mendoza, the baby boomer booktuber. She says, we read a lot of the same genre, especially Agatha Christie. What was the first book you read from Agatha Christie? My first Agatha Christie ever was Murder on the Orient Express, and I found it in my local library at the time. And they had a little Agatha Christie section in the crime section at the back, and I read that, and then I think I went back to the library and read 7 or 8 of her books that same month because I loved it. Rebecca Molyneux asks a really interesting question. So lots of booktubers talk about buddy reads. I've always wondered exactly how this works, other than 2 people reading the same book. Do you check in with each other after reading a certain number of pages, or just discuss at the end? I have done various buddy reads, Rebecca, and with different people they have worked in different ways, and I'm quite easygoing about how I buddy read, so I tend to ask the other person how they prefer to do it. But we usually communicate through an app called Voxer. This is a free app you can get, and the reason why it's kind of favoured by buddy reading is because you can leave voice messages on it, and the best thing about that is that you can write a typed message to say which chapters it's about, so that you don't spoil the book for the other person. They can listen to the message when they're ready for it. So I really like Voxer for buddy reads, but I have also done buddy reads on Instagram, and I've done buddy reads using Discord, both of which are other apps. And so the first stage is that we usually say to each other we'd like to read the same book. Then, like, nearer the time that we've planned for the buddy read, I will say to the person, like, how do you want to approach the buddy read? Shall we read a certain amount of chapters or a certain amount of pages and then check in? Or shall we just check in when we feel like it? And different people have different ways of doing this. One way that it works very well for me is I've done quite a lot of buddy reads with Gemma from Gemma Books, and we tend to approach buddy reads quite casually. Like, to fit the buddy read around our life a bit more, we tend to say, right, on the first day, I've definitely got a lot of time that day, we'll read 2 chapters and then check in. But then we might come to a day when we haven't got much time, and we'll say, oh, I've only got time to read 1 chapter today, and that works really, really well. Other buddy reads I've done have been more set out for us, so we've said, right, we'll read 2 chapters every day for 2 weeks, and we'll check in every 2 days, so we're checking in on sort of every 4 chapters. I think it's just about agreeing it with the person that you're reading with, and I've had a lot of really brilliant buddy reads with really brilliant booktubers who have taught me a lot, who have added loads to what I've been reading. Buddy reads really do vary based on the person, the time frame, but that's the basic gist of what we do. So the lovely Charlie Brooke asks, if you could pick a character from any book to help you solve mysteries, who would you choose and why? It's got to be Hercule Poirot. He would solve all of the mysteries. And Charlie also asks my best and worst book buys. And I think the reason why Charlie is asking me this is because Charlie and I read together Maggie Shipstead's latest book, You Have a Friend in 10A, which is a book of short stories. We both bought it full price. We both bought signed copies, I believe, in hardback, and then we both read it and we didn't really like it very much. So that was probably not a great book buy, and I'm reluctant to let mine go because it kind of feels like a souvenir of that trip to London where I bought it, and it's signed, but then again, I didn't really enjoy it very much, so that was a shame. Best book buys. There have been many books that I've bought that I've loved, and some books that I've loved on audiobook or somewhere else and have ended up buying them. Additionally, I would say that the books I've probably got a lot of use out of are my Georgia Nicholson collection here. I think most of those were second hand, and I have read them over and over again, so probably those. Lil's Vintage World asks, how did you learn to crochet and what is your next project? So my crocheting story, I'll try and make it short, is that a few years ago I was working in a preschool, and in, I think it was Aldi or Lidl, they were selling crochet sets of Harry Potter, and I bought one. I was telling my work colleagues at preschool, I bought this set, you can make a Harry Potter. Then I've looked at the instructions and there's no way I'm ever going to be able to make a Harry Potter. And from that discussion, 2 of my work colleagues also bought the same set, and it became a challenge. So we were like, right, who's going to be first to be able to make the Harry Potter? And we all sort of started off trying to teach ourselves crochet. It was really hard work. I taught myself. I did borrow a couple of crochet books from the library, but I just couldn't make sense of the instructions just printed flat on the page. So I ended up with good old YouTube, Googling like how to do a slip knot, how to start crocheting and just do the basic stitches. And I learned all of this from a wonderful crochet channel called Coco Crochet, and so easy, well explained videos where you can visually see how she is doing it. So I'd highly recommend that to crochet beginners. She has pretty much all the things you would need for beginning to crochet. So I then sort of moved on slowly to like flat rows of crochet, then making granny squares, and I've made various different sort of flat projects. One of the first things that starts out flat and then you kind of stitch it together to make it non-flat was these little owls, which I found in one of the library books that I borrowed. So I've made quite a few of them. They're quite fun. And then sort of gradually built up really. My husband bought me a Star Wars crochet set, and I think the first thing I made was a Jawa, and then later on made Yoda. Yoda is one of my favourite projects I've done. Then I thought, I think I'm ready for the Harry Potter set, the original set. So about a year after I had bought it, I managed to sit down and I was now able to follow the pattern and the instructions to make it. And I completed that project. As far as I know, neither of the other ladies have made it yet, but they have made lots of other cool crochet projects, and it was well worth sort of competing with them because I find competition very, very motivating. So that was how I came to first do crochet. And Lil also has asked, what is my next project? I have been pretty shameful in crocheting lately, but I thought I would show 2 crochet books which I think will have my next project in. So one that I bought was Literary Yarns. I think I showed this time last year because I really wanted to make crochet Sherlock Holmes for Victober, and I think that might be a Victober project I'll try and take up this year. So that could be my next project. I would also, now I've read the Anne of Green Gables books, really like to make the little Anne Shirley as well. And in the post today, the lovely Jack from Spread Book Joy has sent me Beastly Crochet, and I would really like to learn to add things to my crochet. And one of the things in this book is zips that you can add, and I really like this gnome coin purse. I think that's so cute. I might try and make that. So lots of ideas in these 2 books, and thank you Jack for sending me this one. So David Creager, one of my subscribers who kindly comments on a lot of my videos, has asked, have you ever read the Shannara series by Terry Brooks, specifically the beginning trilogy? I have not read this, David. I've actually not heard of it until now, so I will look that up and see if it is a book series I would like to read. Marilyn Meyer Mendoza has a 3rd question in here, and that's, hi Alice, did you always have a giant bookshelf? I did not always have a giant bookshelf, Marilyn. I've always have had a bookshelf. There was a time when I think I probably didn't have many books or any books that I hadn't yet read. I used to buy books and read them, or I used to get books from the library. And then around about when I was at university, I think, is where it probably all went wrong, because I left a lot of books at home, and I also moved away to university and started building up a bookshelf there. And then when those 2 collections got back together, there was a lot of books. And I think this was also the time when I started to buy books that were like in 3 for 2 deals and things like that. And books started to mount up. The lovely Ray of Sunlight asks, how did being a teacher influence your own reading? I think it's influenced my own reading in that I am much more open to reading children's books, and I have such a love for children's books still, even though I've now not got a class to read them to. I still like to read new children's books and find new children's books. My desire to teach came from my love of learning, and love of learning is very much intrinsically linked to love of reading for me. Being a teacher and reading have definitely been very, very linked in my life. Andy Hart's Books has asked me, what is your favourite book about books? That is undoubtedly Dear Reader by Kathy Rensenbrink. Absolutely loved this last year. I also read last year Bookworm by Lucy Mangan, but I would say that out of the two, I slightly love Dear Reader more. I think it's a brilliant, brilliant book. Glenda W also asked me another question, which was name your favourite non-classic book. I think I'm going to count my favourite book of all time, A Clockwork Orange, as being a classic. It's definitely a modern classic. So I would go with one of my very favourite books of all time is definitely High Fidelity by Nick Hornby. This is a book about relationships basically, and about a guy who's pretty hopeless in love and sort of explores his relationships and why they went wrong. That's one of my favourites that I have read that is not a classic. Kate Howe has asked a popular book that you just don't enjoy. Actually, I know which one this is going to be. This is Wuthering Heights. I know Victober fans are going to go mad, Bronte fans are going to go mad, but I didn't like Wuthering Heights at all. It was the first classic I read really, and it really did put me off reading classics for a very long time. It's a book that I one day will probably return to, but not for a very long time because I didn't like it at all. And I also had 3 questions from Instagram. Jennifer Loves Books asked me, how has your reading changed since starting your channel? The amount that I'm reading has changed massively. I think I probably used to read maybe about 6 books a month, and I now seem to be averaging kind of around 10 a month. I also think listening to more audiobooks has contributed to this. The channel has kind of spurred me on to try and read a different variety of books. So initially I started the channel thinking that it would be trying to read through my giant bookshelf, and then with joining in judging the BookTube Prize earlier this year, I just discovered so many different genres and new books that I enjoyed, and yeah, I think it's taken a turn from there. It's definitely opened my horizons and changed what I think of as what I enjoy about books. It's branched me out from my comfort zone of crime and mysteries into reading a lot more sort of literary fiction, historical fiction, and just a bigger variety of books. And I already really did think that I read quite a variety of books. So L. Jean Miller asks, what motivated you to start your channel? Just wanting to talk about books really. I think I wouldn't have started this channel without the lockdown in 2020, because in that lockdown I was making videos of me reading children's books to post on like our parent app at preschool so that I could do a story time with the children every week. So that was what got me started making videos. Once I'd done that, I kind of felt more confident with the idea of being on camera, which was not an idea that I'd ever really thought of before. And much later into 2020 I discovered BookTube through like looking for videos about writing. I discovered Jen Campbell's channel and ended up sucked into BookTube, and what gave me the final push to start a BookTube channel was Katie from Books and Things announcing the 1900 to 1950 readathon, and I thought, I wonder if I can answer all of the prompts with books off my bookshelf, because at that time I was on a strict book buying ban, and I had plenty of books from that era to read. It gave me the final motivational push to finally make a video and put myself out there on this channel. So the initial impetus behind the channel, I guess, was to read more of my backlog of books and to kind of keep myself accountable, and it has done that, but it also has caused me to buy quite a few more books. So swings and roundabouts. And finally, Becky from Teacup the Storyteller asks, have you ever considered having another YouTube channel about something else, e.g. crocheting? No, probably not. I haven't really considered having a channel about anything else because the reading and the making booktube videos, editing the booktube videos, and all things bookish just takes up quite a lot of time already. I don't think I would make a channel about crocheting because I don't think I'm good enough at it to actually run a channel about it. I think it would just be a channel of me like undoing my projects all the time. So no, not a crocheting channel, and I don't think there's anything else I really want to do a channel about. Thank you everybody for the questions. That seems like so many questions, and I'm just going to have a very quick check that I haven't missed any. If I've missed your question, I'm so sorry, and please leave me it in the description down below if you think I missed you out. I think that is all of the questions. Thank you so much if you left me a question, and thank you if you've sat through me answering the questions. I hope you found out lots more about me and about Harry, who has left the building. Thank you for watching today. If you have enjoyed this video, please do give it a like. Please do consider subscribing if you haven't already. I will hope very much to see you all again soon for another video all about books here on Alice and the Giant Bookshelf. Bye for now.